Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 376 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host tonight, Ben, and I am joined by Charlie. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
Hello. Yes, I am very well. Lovely long weekend. We were literally talking, by the way, before we started about how crap adulting is. Great thing about adulting is you get these long weekends. Granted, that got even longer when I was back at university and didn't do anything anyway. But still, I'm relishing the opportunity to not have to do anything for 4 days straight.
You genuinely made your university time sound like it was just one long extended holiday.
Of course, a lot of that is just an exaggeration. I have to say that.
It's not, though, is it, Charlie? Come on.
Shh, stop telling people. I always laugh. So obviously before I moved over to Gibraltar, I came over and visited a few times last year. And I was sat drinking on Thursday night after work. And we were sat in this pub and my mate says, I've never drank in here before. I says, I have like once. He says, when was that? I says, it was actually before I moved out here. He says, right. Was it when you kind of just came out and you were out drinking with a friend or something? I said, no. I had my coursework due in 3 days' time and I was sat here with my laptop having a pint in this random pub. So I don't really help myself, do I?
No, that's incredible. But no, I mean, obviously, yeah, you had a little trip back to the UK and now you're back in Gib. How is it? How did it compare? Are you glad you're back? Are you missing the UK?
I think 5 days was about enough.
Okay.
It's no. Look, it's always nice to come back, to catch up with family, to catch up with friends. We had a fantastic day and night last Saturday. 1 week on, still very much reminiscent on how much I enjoyed that evening. But it is always good to be back, especially when the sun is shining. And yeah, like I say, I came back and was immediately able to open the windows all evening and just enjoy some fresh air. Something that I don't really get too much. Although I will be honest, I definitely picked the right weekend for it back in the UK.
Yeah, it was beautiful last weekend. To be fair, it's not been too bad today. I was going to say the rest of the week, but I think it was Tuesday was cooking it down. I was not happy, but
yes,
yeah, no,
yes.
But yeah, enough about the weather and everything else, because that's the typical British way of talking about things. We're here to talk about football, here to talk about Lincoln City, and of course, Good Friday win away at Reading. I don't think anybody maybe realistically expected us to take all 3 points, given that Reading were breathing down the neck of the playoffs. They were in sixth before we went into the game. We have knocked them out of that top six, and it was a pretty decent performance all around. I think I know Chris has described it in our group chat as possibly the most complete performance of the season. I'm struggling to argue with that, given some of the other performances we've had this year. I think we've had some really solid ones, but this was the first one in this new kind of the new system that Skubala's trying to try out. And I thought we were, from minute one, I thought we were excellent yesterday. There wasn't really a player that had a bad game. But let's talk about the lineup first and foremost before we go into the game, because obviously the lineup came out. James Collins and Eric Ring were sat on the bench. I mean, it makes sense for Collins, given the quick turnaround with Monday coming up as well. But I was slightly surprised to see Eric Ring not given a start. I mean, obviously, Joe Gardner was starting. And then Rico was out wide with House in that 10 role. So any surprises from you, Charlie, and how did you see the lineup going into it?
I'll be honest, I'm not really surprised by any decisions made when it comes to lineup now, when we do have nothing to play for. I think you can very much split. There was 4 changes. I think you can split them 2 and 2. You can split the James Collins and Montsma being dropped for Hamer and Draper, more than likely to be for fitness reasons, bearing in mind the game is on Monday. I think it's probably fair to say we probably want James Collins to be playing a full 90 every single week. But we're not always going to get that, and I think that's absolutely fine. We'll accept that. We know that a player in his mid-30s isn't going to be able to play and start 46 games a season. So I think kind of easing both of those two players in with an eye to next season is totally fair enough. So those two, not surprised at all. The other two, again, not really that much of a surprise, because I think at this stage of the season, does Skubala know his best 11? That's a question we've spoken about on the podcast before. Chances are the answer is probably no. I also think that's a good thing, because I don't really think you should know a best 11. You should have a squad where there are certain positions that are interchangeable between players. So just trying out different systems in terms of the players that you play together, especially in those three positions behind the striker, I think is just a normal part of coming towards the end of a season.
Yeah, I think when you say, does he know his best 11, I think the question we've asked before is there necessarily such thing as a best 11 when the way that we tend to set up is always, how do the opposition play? Let's counteract that, rather than this is how we play, come at us. We will tend to try and tinker and tweak things depending on how the opposition set up and have done over the past few games. So yeah, I think this was, like you say, James Collins is always going to be the first choice striker, but Gaz mentioned in his write up today that there's probably maybe a slight air of cynicism to it when he says, what would you rather have? Would you rather have James Collins firing on all cylinders from minute one away at Reading in front of 400 fans, or at home in a packed house in Bank in front of 9,000 City fans on Monday? That's maybe a little bit cynical, maybe a little bit of a conspiracy in that one, but it's with a basis, it's with grounding. So it made sense to me. And I think if you're not gonna be able to play full 90s week in, week out, or game in, game out, it makes sense to put him on the bench when he's when we're away from home. But I mean, the game started really brightly, to be fair. I thought we looked really good for the first, for the first half and most of the second half as well, to be fair. But like for that first 10, 15 minutes, I thought we were great. The first 5 minutes of the game, I don't think Reading really had a touch. I think we were chatting in the WhatsApp group, and we were saying, I don't, Reading have hardly had a chance. I mean, we didn't create any gilt-edged chances in those first 5 minutes. But we forced a couple of, I think there was a couple of early corners. We definitely looked like we were trying to get stuck in, and it was one of those where, if the argument is, the players are going to be on the beach, absolutely not. From minute one, I think everyone was trying to prove, all right, this shirt's mine for next season. Come take it from me. So then the next bit, the first touch that Reading really had, to be honest, the first effort that they had, was that free kick. So, I think it was Rico gave the free kick away. Looking back on it, it's very soft. He kind of puts his leg out and the guy just jumps over it more than anything else. The ball comes across, headed back towards the edge of the 6-yard box. And then I think it was their number 9, whose name I am absolutely not going to try.
Go on, give it a go.
Is it Ebashaman?
I have no idea, mate. I just want you to try and make a fool of yourself.
To be fair, Matt from Elm Park Royals did say it a couple of times on the preview, and I just went, "Yep, I'm not going to attempt that one." But I think it was him that got the final touch. Looping header, looked like it was going in for all the world, and then George Wickens out of nowhere just diving to his left and palming it away with one hand round the post, which was phenomenal save. Absolutely brilliant stuff. But I mean, other than that, Reading didn't have too much to say in the first half, despite having, I think it was around 62% possession is what the stats say to me here. So, I mean, were you surprised by that, Charlie?
I think it's always a little bit surprising when you do go to a playoff chasing team, a team who, were in good form and were probably kind of expectant to a certain extent. Of course, you can never truly expect a result in the division, but we're probably expectant of a good performance and hopefully a good result to match. So then when we go there and, we mentioned earlier on how it was one of, if not the most complete performances of the whole season. Away from home, if you go away from home in those first 5 minutes, you settle yourself in, you keep the ball, you like you say, you don't necessarily create a clear chance or get a goal, but you kind of do get your feet under the table a little bit. And that's exactly what we did. And that's exactly what we needed to do. And then the minute that happens, Reading, even though they're the home side, they're going to be playing a little bit like they're the away side. They're going to feel like they're starting to have to chase the game a little bit, even if there isn't a goal in it. You know, you can go away from home and you can score inside of the second minute, but it could just be a lucky bounce that goes for you, or a great goal, or whatever it might be. And then you've not actually used that opportunity at any point to get your feet under the table, and then boom, you lose 3-1. You know, but that's not what we did here. We obviously, by the way, we would have liked a goal. I'm not saying that we wouldn't have liked a goal in those first 5 minutes, but yeah, we used the opportunity to really get ourselves comfortable away from home, which is what we all wanted to see. And then, yes, Reading did have a couple of different opportunities, you know, and especially that one, which, by the way, that save, yeah, George Wickens has probably not got as much praise over the course of the season as our previous goalkeepers have done. Over the last few years, again, because we've just been truly blessed with some of the keepers we've had. And obviously the fact Wickens had a little bit of an injury, he stayed out for a little longer as Sheacock came in and all of that. But again, let's be honest, what a keeper he is becoming as well. He had some ropey situations in some ropey games a little bit earlier on in the year, but recently his form has been outstanding and his shot stopping has been outstanding as well. So I'm really pleased for him, because that was one of the best reflex saves I think I've seen in a goalkeeper in a Lincoln City shirt. And then, yeah, you know, like you say, we go towards half time, we're still at 0-0, and it seems as though we are the comfortable side here. And, you know, we talk about on the beach, and for the record, I don't ever believe that a team or any player is, or at least should be, on the beach, right? You might get it if you've got a team who have already won the title, one game to go, and all of their players are contracted for the next year. All right, yeah, they may not like care quite as much, but the professional footballers, they'll still want to win the game to finish the season well and things like that. Now, for us, that actually helps us a little bit, because we don't really have any pressure on us. There will be individual players who know that they're fighting for a future, whether that's a Lincoln City future or a future elsewhere, but there's no kind of overall team pressure. Reading had that yesterday. We were comfortable, and like I say, we've probably made them chase it a little bit from that first half.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about, you know, teams being on the beach when they're pretty much high and dry. I mean, look at what happened yesterday. Birmingham drawing against Crawley. I don't think anybody would have seen that result coming. But yeah, it's a fair point. But I think we should probably talk a little bit about George Wickens, because, like you say, maybe not had the praise throughout the whole season as much as some of our previous keepers have. And I think I've been quite critical of him with a few things this season. You know, earlier on, I thought maybe there were some moments where he looked a little bit shaky, looked a little bit, I don't want to say off the boil because that's really harsh, but, you know, he maybe taking his time to find his feet a little bit. Since he's come back from injury, he almost feels like a new signing, and you know, all over again. He's been really, really solid for me since returning. You know, I don't think there's been too many instances where a goal can be directly attributed to him making a mistake, or, you know, him being subpar. I think, as we've said before, there've been individual errors elsewhere which have allowed situations to come up where he's been kind of up the creek without a paddle. You know, I'm thinking, you know, the goal the other week where, you know, there was a mistake from Sean Rowan and it basically left him completely stranded. You know, it was one of those instances. But yeah, he's just been really, really solid for me since coming back from injury. And I would hope that this would just fill him full of confidence, because, again, keeping a clean sheet away at a side that are chasing a top six spot, pulling off that save, you know, early doors to deny them, I think it's just going to, you know, increase his confidence, and hopefully he can keep it going throughout next season as well.
Yeah, I very much hope so. And I think that's kind of the point of what we were making earlier on about you know, a lot of these players are very much fighting for their position next season, not just in terms of those that are out of contract, but in terms of those who want to make sure that they are regular starters and absolute first team players, some of the first names on the team sheet. So you want to see strong performances from those sorts of players going into the last few games of the season. You know, I had the conversation in fact, I was having a conversation with my dad last week, and we were talking about the fact that after that Shrewsbury game, there was a genuine chance that we may not get another win for the rest of the season, for the last 4 games of the season, when we looked on paper at some of the teams that we, had coming up, and Reading being the first of those. All 4 of the teams are fighting for promotion. But as I said, that has its positives and its negatives, because we can go out there, we can enjoy ourselves, we can have that kind of comfort factor that the other side can't have. And we're going there to really spoil the party in the same way that Wigan came to us and did it last year, the same way that Reading did it at their place last year to us. When we were fighting for something, they were able to kind of hold on, be a little bit more comfortable, and get that equaliser when it comes to Reading in that scenario. So it's kind of nice being on the other end of that, even though you want to be fighting for something. It's nice to know that we can go there and, do you know what? We can play some really nice football and destroy someone's day. So mean, aren't we?
Yeah. So I mean, let's look at the rest of the half. I mean, to be fair, the rest of the first half, it kind of went back and forth. Reading obviously having the majority of the possession, but I think on the balance of it, we probably looked a little bit more dangerous than they did when we got forward. The only thing, and it was something that was a little bit of a premonition, I think, but it felt like we just needed that person who could take a chance. And I actually turned to Rachel at one point. I said, "This is the perfect game for Collins, because if he can take one of these chances, we'll get something here." And obviously, slight foreshadowing on that one, but I mean, there was 3 other moments that I wanted to talk about in the first half from a Lincoln perspective. The first one, Freddie Draper had a really, really stinging shot from the edge of the 18. Now,
danced around defenders for that as well, by the way, which I thought was incredible.
Absolutely. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of bits from Freddie. So I mean, to be fair, I think it's fair to say we're fans of Freddie on the podcast, but he's not had the easiest season. He's not had the best season so far. Well, I say so far. We've got 3 games left. He hasn't had the best season in a Lincoln City shirt. But I think it's clear that the club and those around him still see that there's something there. It was interesting because the first thing that I thought actually yesterday when he started, I thought, bloody hell, has he lost a bit of timber? He looked a little bit leaner yesterday. And I know that's been a criticism from some folks around me, where they've said, "Oh, he doesn't look, he looks too big, or he's not fit enough to be playing." But he looked on it yesterday. When you're a young lad like that playing against centre backs that have probably got a lot more experience in the division, if you go in and you batter them, I think some of the frustrations that I've had when it's come to Freddie this season have been that he's basically not been allowed to play his game. Like, his game is to be physical with defenders, and a lot of the time, like, the referees haven't necessarily allowed him to do that. I think it was a different story yesterday. I think he was able to play a little bit more of his game and do pretty well. Obviously he wasn't outstanding, wasn't man of the match or anything like that, but I thought he had a solid game yesterday compared to some of the bits that we've seen from him before. And I think that shot kind of summed it up, because he dances around a couple of defenders, and it was a really, really stinging shot from the edge of the box, which tested the keeper on his left foot as well, which surprised me a little bit. So, I mean, it's one of those, isn't it, Charlie? It's kind of, he's not had the best season, but we're still keeping him around because it's the right thing to do, and I think honestly he's still got a lot to prove.
I really, really like Fred, really do. I think he's a fantastic striker, and he will be a fantastic striker for an EFL team at some point. He will be a Lincoln City player next season. I certainly don't see us not keeping him as one of those number 9 options. I think the arrival of James Collins, probably one of the worst things that could have happened for Freddie, bless him. Just because, we've now got this proper out and out number 9. Not saying that Freddie isn't, but we've now got this proper out and out number 9 with the experience of bagging a lot of goals in League 2, League 1, even higher. And as good as Freddie is, he hasn't quite got that experience, especially not in League One as of yet. Now, I've said many a times, I think the biggest kind of criticism for Freddie is the fact that, and it's not, it's a criticism, but it isn't his fault. It's the fact that he just doesn't really get a run of games quite as much as you'd want. I genuinely think if Freddie started 5 or 6 games in a row and played 70 or 80 minutes in those 5 or 6 games in a row, by those 4th, 5th, and 6th games, we would be talking about a totally different Freddie Draper than the one that we normally talk about on the podcast. We saw that at Walsall. We saw that at Drogheda. I genuinely do just believe that the more he plays, the better he will become. And obviously, it's easy to say that, right? Because that's just part of any development pathway. But honestly, getting a run of games together, especially as a striker and building that confidence up in him, I think will make him 10 times a better player. Obviously, the question then is well, can we provide that? Do we provide that? Where do we provide that? And when do we provide that? I don't know the answers to those questions. I like the fact that he's with us. He signed a new long-term contract. He is a Lincoln City player. He is one of our own, no matter what kind of definition you want to start putting on that, right? He came up through the academy and he's now a first-team regular. And he is a regular. He plays plenty of minutes to still be classed as somewhat of a regular. Most minutes off the bench, or most appearances off the bench, I think, if I remember the answer to the quiz right last week. But again, I just wonder what is his impact going to be next season?
Yeah,
I want more for Freddie. I really want more for Freddie, because I think if the club give him more, we'll get more out of him. But then it's like as to what cost, because you can't go ahead and just bench James Collins every week. As of course we'll go on to talk about the fact, because he knows where the back of the net is, even if he's only on the pitch for 30 seconds.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in my notes, I've just put, personally, there is, for me, there's still a player there, but whether that player will be a starting Lincoln City number 9 in a system where we're playing as a lone, we're playing a lone striker, I'm not sure. I don't think Freddie's that answer to that question. I'd love for him to prove me wrong and start 28 games next season and score 20 goals, but I just don't think it's going to happen. It's an interesting question though, for sure, and it's whether we keep him as an option. Keith's
I think that's almost a definite that we keep him as an option. By the way.
Yeah, Keith's actually put in here, I'd tell Freddie, I've been watching a lot of Donny's matches and Rob Street is a far better all-round striker in my opinion. Now,
that's obviously all well and good, but we said the same thing this time last year.
Well, exactly. Part of what I want to say there is, first off, you kind of forget that we have those other options in Rob Street, and we'll have Collins, Street, Draper, and then obviously McCarmer can slip into there if he's needed. But it makes sense to have multiple options on the bench in case of injury or whatever. But also, let's not forget that, yes, Rob Street is absolutely smashing it at Donny, and I'm delighted for him, and I hope we see more of him next season. But there is a little bit of a gulf still between League One and League Two. But yeah, it's a discussion that we'll have no doubt countless times over the close season. But before we dive into those too much, I'm just going to pull it back to the game where there was an incident involving Ben House. Now the ball comes to Ben House, he gets it, and he has a little bit of a tussle with a defender, and the keeper kind of stops play, and Ben just chips it into the net. Now, I've seen some people refer to this as a disallowed goal. For me, it's not. I think it's a foul that shouldn't have been given. But to me, that incident is not a foul in a million years. You see it all the time, and we've said it before. If this happens 10, 15 yards further up the pitch, it's just classed as a footballing incident, to coin an F1 phrase. It's like there's no malice in it. There's no contact really. Like if you watch it back, and this is the annoying thing, they haven't put this in the highlights, so finding the footage to watch it back is bloody difficult. But yeah, to me, that's not a foul. It's just jockeying the defender. So there's barely any contact, and he goes down a good second or two after he's finished with that. And that could have been the shot in the arm for Ben House. I mean, I think he needs a goal. I think he needs something.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a comment from Keith, which we'll come to a little bit later. But it felt like that could have been a big moment for Ben House. And unfortunately, it was just taken away from him before he even got the opportunity, Charlie.
Yeah, look, I agree. First of all, I do think Ben probably does need a goal or two. Again, I've been one of Ben House's biggest supporters on this podcast many a time. As I've brought up plenty, people say, "Oh, yeah, he doesn't really know where the back of the net is." All well and good. I get that, but a few seasons ago, where he bagged 14 goals for us that season, and I've said this before, I'm going to repeat it. We scored 6 penalties that same season. He didn't take any of them. If he'd have taken them, boom, he's a 20-goal-a-season striker. And people's perceptions change. Not saying that makes him a better player because he takes penalties, but I'm saying people's perception on a striker like that changes. And again, I do really like him. I think what he can do for us in a couple of different systems is big. But I also get the criticism. Is he a striker? And if he is, he needs to put the ball in the back of the net more. Is he a number 10? Okay, that's fine. Then he needs to make sure that he's creating more. And I get it. It's kind of, he's just not the finished product, and you want that kind of extra output from Ben House. And then if you add that to the rest of his kind of style and ability, then we've got an outstanding League One footballer. But again, I get the criticism with that. In terms of that incident itself, it's just the way refereeing's going, isn't it? There's a difference between what we deem should be a foul and shouldn't, and what we have to accept nowadays just is a foul and what isn't. And it annoys me. It really annoys me, because obviously how many different opportunities from different strikers, because we have got some physical attackers on our team. How many other kind of opportunities could we have been given if referees were a little bit more lenient over the course of the season? But like I say, unfortunately, they're always going to back the defender in those positions. Should they? No. And was it poor? Yes. But do we kind of just have to accept that they'll do it? Unfortunately.
Oh, Charlie's mic has just dropped, I believe.
Yeah, hasn't it? I'm here.
Oh, no, there we go. Did you hit a button, Charlie?
I don't think so. Probably. But yeah, it is infuriating, but I think we kind of just have to accept that is unfortunately the way the game is played now.
Yeah, no, it was one of those. And ultimately, it didn't really matter in the end of it, at the end of the game. So, last bit of the first half really was a really interesting effort from Jacko that I thought started off as a cross, and then the keeper managed to do well to tip it over. I think it may have been going over anyway, but really interesting one from Jacko. I just thought it was worth highlighting. As
goal of the season if it goes in.
Oh, 100%. Incredible.
From a centre half and all,
Absolutely.
Do you know what, though? I just with that, because it happened a couple of times yesterday where we had extra opportunities because of it. Again, the recycling of play that we're able to do from set pieces, I really like. It's not just we're just going to boot the ball into the middle of the park and hope that we'll get something back from it. It's making sure to try and pick somebody out. And obviously, we like to use that back post area. In fact, if I remember correctly, that in itself was, it was Tendai Derico going long to that back post area to find Jacko. Obviously, in the hope that he would maybe try and either knock it down somebody in front. He actually had more time on it, which is why he was able to kind of bring it down. And it was a cross, obviously, but and curl it around the keeper almost. We'll give him the credit for thinking that it was a shot. But yeah, with that, I think I love the fact that we are able to recycle opportunities so much from set pieces with so many different positions as well and different players to do that.
Absolutely. So, going at half time, 0-0, fair enough. Decent first half. I think nobody could have really complained too much about everything. So then second half starts, kind of more of the same, to be honest. I think we still looked really good. We managed to restrict Reading quite a bit in terms of chances, in terms of clear-cut chances. Obviously, Lewis Wing was having a pop from wherever because that's what he does. Didn't really trouble Wickens too much. I don't think any of them actually landed anywhere near the target that didn't get blocked beforehand. And then, obviously, 61 minutes, Eric Ring comes on for Joe Gardner. And then 65 minutes, there was the moment, wasn't there, Charlie? So, as I said, sitting there in the first half, looking at it, going, I think this needs Collins to, just to finish off one of these chances, even though they weren't as golden as you'd probably expect. You think Collins would probably bury one of those. Sure enough, Freddie goes off, James Collins comes on, and in terms of game time, 5 seconds. In terms of actual time, I think it was 40 something, 42 seconds. But, from the resulting free kick, Rico lofts it across. Collins loses his man. Acres of space. Heads it down. Bounces over the keeper. The keeper's dive. Just a really, really well-worked goal. Really clever. Like, you watch it back, you just see how one or two players going a little tiny bit early draws that entire defensive line back, apart from, thankfully, the lad that's marking James Collins. He then, comes round, gets a yard on his man, and gets on the end of it. Just a really, really clever finish from possibly the most important signing of the season once again, Charlie.
People give some strikers stick because they only score tap-ins. Part of only scoring a tap-in is being in the right spot all the time. It's not the right spot, right time. It's right spot all the time. That is what a proper number 9 gives you. And that is exactly what James Collins did inside of 5 seconds yesterday. Again, whether that was also because Reading maybe didn't have the right man on him because he'd literally just come on the pitch, or kind of what had gone on there. But yeah, the way he's able to lose his man and get the ball in the back of the net. Look how he does it. He got the ball in the back of the net. And again, his movement, the whole team's movement, first of all, but his movement to be able to create that opportunity for himself, to make sure that he is in the right place for that ball coming in, to then be able to get that in the back of the net, I just thought was excellent. And it was exactly what we've spoken about it many times. It was what we've missed at certain points. And again, I don't know. I was always a little bit kind of dubious to, do we really need this proper out-and-out number 9 in a one-striker formation or whatever before we sign James Collins? Like, yeah, okay, it's really good to have, but actually, have we got those players in the squad and we just need to tap into it? With the likes of Jovan, with the likes of Freddie. And yeah, okay, because I can say that till I'm blue in the face, and I can say that every single week. But I very much have to backtrack then when we have that out-and-out number 9 that is scoring the goals like James Collins already is. I'm like, yeah, okay, I was happily wrong. Those other players can progress, but they can progress behind him. We're going to have James Collins leading the line for us next season. And again, I know we wouldn't be raving about him as much if he'd only signed on a 6-month contract. Like we would be like, oh, well, yeah, he scored. Yeah, okay, it keeps us in 12th place or gets us up to 11th at the end of the season. So what? Next year, we're going to just be in the same predicament as we were at the start of this year. That's not the case. We've got him on this 18-month deal, which is the biggest key point. So now, this time next year, we could be talking about the exact same sort of goal, but it could be a few places higher in the division. That's the hope. That's the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to put the cherry on what you just said there, Gaz did put out the stats. So James Collins minutes 1,131, James Collins shots 30, James Collins goals 8, Joe Taylor minutes 1,554, Joe Taylor's shots 47, and Joe Taylor goals 10. So we're looking at 400 more minutes for 2 more goals and 17 more shots from Joe Taylor last season, and we were raving about the impact that he had.
And the season's not over.
Yeah, absolutely. We've still got 3 games left. Like he could end up in double figures for the season, which would be ridiculous. Considering the fact he came in January, just unbelievable. But then after that, after the goal, it was just about keeping hold of that lead rather than trying to extend it. Really, I thought we marshalled Reading really, really well. I said earlier, Wing got a couple of shots off, but they were either blocked or they were skied. And then I think the only one really that caused a little bit of concern was Charlie Savage towards the end. Had one shot that possibly could have beaten George Wickens, but it missed the target by quite a distance. So overall, just a really, really solid away win, and one that probably derails Reading very slightly. And I think off the record, away from the context of the 90 minutes, I still really hope Reading do it, to be honest. I hope they get up and get into the playoffs, and I hope they can go up. I know it's going to be a difficult season if they do, but just because of the crap that their fans have been through and everybody else associated with the club, really, I hope that they can do something phenomenal with this season. But that was the game, wasn't it, Charlie? Decent one.
Look, it was a great game. It was the complete performance. Everything that you want out of an away game was what we got yesterday, apart from maybe like 3 or 4 more goals. But you can't have everything, can you? And you know what? I think me and you have actually been really lucky here, Ben, because this time last week, in fact, almost to the minute, we were sat down watching the home game against Shrewsbury, hoping for a good performance and a good result and something exciting to go on and talk about on the live podcast last Saturday night. Now, where we got lucky was obviously that was awful, that game. And me and you didn't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Instead, this week, we're talking about what was an outstanding performance away at Reading. And it was a sort of performance that if that was earlier on in the season, you'd be like, we're really looking good this year. Yeah. So let's just hope that, by September, October, we're having those same sort of performances and results next season. It reinvigorates a little bit of excitement for the summer and beyond, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will continue the discussion after we come back from a little advert break. We've also got the Easter Monday game to look forward to against Bolton. So join us after the break for that one. But in the meantime, we will let you listen to somebody trying to sell something, and we'll have a chat to the folks over on YouTube that are watching us live. See you in a minute. And hello to those of you that are watching live on YouTube, and I think Facebook as well. There we go. So let's see who's in. We've got Andy S is in. He says, good afternoon, everyone. Steve is in. Steve Barton says, hi, guys. Good morning from America, chaps, says Matt Smith. I wonder if that's not the Matt Smith, is it? The Doctor Who Matt Smith. Steve asks the question of, as Landon is in the UK, do you think we'll see him on Monday? It's a good point. We'll probably raise that after the break.
Is Landon in the UK, is he?
He tweeted a photo, I think, of him on a jet, and he said, "Oh, I'm coming over to see 3 matches. If anybody can guess all 3 matches, then I'll send you some signed merchandise." And there were loads of people guessing like all Championship Premier League games, and then there was just a few people that was like, "We know where he's going," because he went.
So
to the
one of them will be Everton.
Yeah,
I mean, it'll be linked. Oh, was he at the game yesterday? I missed that.
He was at the game yesterday. So yeah,
right. Yes.
So Keith has actually put in a couple of comments. One of them we've mentioned, but the other one says, afternoon, lads. I thought House showed the 2 sides of him yesterday. Very hard-working, but definitely not a goal scorer. When Hamer flicked the ball across, House was stood still and didn't anticipate it. I think we also learned that Lucas isn't in Scoop's plans at all. I would argue he hasn't been given a chance, and unlike Gary continues to say, it's not because he's from Lincoln. I'd have liked to have seen him given a chance because he's done it at the top level. I mean, I think we covered House in the segment, and I think he's in that, like, he's a 9.5 at the moment. He's not quite a number 9. He's not quite a number 10. We need to figure out what's best for Ben House at the minute. Regards to Sam, I think this is probably going to be the last thing that we say on it, because me and Chris went into a bit of depth on it on Thursday. It's obviously disappointing that we haven't seen as much as Sam as we probably would have expected to or would have liked. I do think that there is an element of he's from Lincoln, he's come back to finish his career, we want to see more of him. Whether that's down to a personal level, I'm not necessarily saying, Keith, that is what you would believe. It's one of those where it's just fizzled out, and that's fine. Things fizzle out all the time. It's just a disappointment. I would, provided there's no bad blood, I would expect Sam to stay around the football club in some capacity. It sounds like he's been a real help to the younger players at the minute. So whether he goes into coaching or not, I don't know.
From me on that, it just boils down to the fact I don't know what's gone on. I don't think anybody ever will, apart from the people that are in the situation. I don't necessarily think that it means that by saying that, I don't necessarily believe that there is some big divide between Sam and people at the club. I also very much don't buy into the conspiracy that there is a divide between certain people at the club. And I know that that is the big conspiracy theory that everybody wants to talk about. Oh, Jez bought him and Skubala never wanted him. That's why he's not playing him and all of that. I think that's just utter rubbish. I think we all, and when I say we all, I don't just mean us guys on the podcast, but I mean all of us as fans who know people at the club, who spend time around the club, who go to the games week in, week out. We know that the people running our football club aren't like that. There are plenty of clubs in this country that if you did hear that kind of a conspiracy theory, you'd happily believe it. Lincoln City just is not one of those football clubs. So don't know what went on. And I just think, honestly, the conversation around it now is just getting very, very tedious because there's just so many different kind of points of view where everybody's got this inside source and it's all telling different things. And it just, we don't know what went on. We don't know what's happened. We would all like to see more of Sam play. And hopefully we do win the last 3 games.
Yeah, there we go. Let's draw a line under that discussion now then. So Carl says, afternoon, boys. He also says the pressure will be on the next 3 teams we play as they're all in promotion contention. So I can see us taking more points. It's a fair point. I mean, if the pressure's on them, one little crack and it could start to crumble. That was the comment about that. Kev says about Freddie, says he's a Matt Reed in a new world, and although he has some talent, he's neither fast enough or fit enough for the game we play. I would probably argue the fit enough point. I think he's definitely getting there. But yeah, no, it's a fair point. Sue says, local radio after the match, we have a strong physical team that bullied Reading and looked like the team chasing promotion. I'm assuming that's the Reading local radio saying that about us. Rach says hello from the living room. Of course she does. It's not the doctor, Matt Smith. Also,
it would be so good if Matt Smith was actually a doctor as well, by the way.
I'm a doctor, but not the doctor. Yeah. Sue says, also, they looked superb yesterday. So worth the journey and a worldy save from George. This is the team we want to see on Monday. I'd expect there'll be a couple of changes, namely Mr. Collins coming in to start. But other than that, I can't see too many changes happening. But we'll talk about that in a second when we come back from the break. So in 3, 2, 1, and there we go. Thank you to our advertisers for the week or for the weekend, and thank you to those of you that are watching live on Facebook and YouTube, because it's always good to chat to people while things are going on. So before we come to the Bolton game, there's a very quick one that I just wanted to drop in. Obviously, Charlie, you and I did the section last week around the loanees that we have out at the moment and how they're getting on. There was a couple that didn't give us, we couldn't get hold of a quote from the opposition team, the other teams, to see how they were. One of those being Tranmere regarding Zach Bradshaw. But I did have a response later in the week, and basically it went into a requests folder because Elon has broken Twitter and it doesn't. Yeah, anyway. So I just asked about how Zach's getting on. And this is from the A Trip to the Moon pod. All about, I think they do a lot of interviews with ex-Tranmere players and stuff. So it seems like quite a decent podcast if you're into Tranmere. And he says, regarding Zach, he's had a tough year. The managers have alluded to personal issues. So started very strongly, then faded because of those. But he seems like he's bouncing back after a change in manager. It can't have been easy playing under Adkins, in all fairness. So, yeah, sounds like Zach's had a bit of a tough time of it at Tranmere.
Yeah, it kind of very much builds on the conversation that I think we had regarding Zach Bradshaw of, from the outside looking in, because we can never really get the same kind of an insight as what an actual Tranmere fan themselves can get. I think it seemed that there was quite a lot of inconsistency. It's interesting to hear that might be down to a couple of personal issues. And then again, obviously, the managerial situation and just Tranmere, unfortunately, as a football club as a whole this year, have had quite a few kind of ups and downs. So, which is kind of the point I think you made last week, that it's not really that much of a surprise that one of our players going there on loan may not have really had the best time of it because of the situation there, just as much as what they can actually bring to the team as an individual player. Obviously, that unfortunately, if there are kind of some personal issues with that as well, then yeah, that impact may very much have been hindered from that side of it as well.
100%. Right. So let's look ahead to Easter Monday. So I have a bit of a fond memory due to the timing more than anything else, not necessarily the game. But I remember taking a very long road trip over to Bolton on a freezing cold January We left nice and early, and honestly, the trip was completely frozen the whole way. This was back in 2010. In the FA Cup, got a third round game away at Bolton, and we got absolutely hammered 4-0. And then, sure enough, 15 years later, we're now talking about this because it is a standard league fixture that we've seen multiple times over the past few years. Now, Bolton currently 8th in the table. Still very much got eyes on the playoffs. They're only 3 points off the playoffs, but they have a 20 goal deficit to make up if they want to get in on goal difference. Is this a Bolton side, Charlie, that have probably underperformed a bit this year? Because I think there's a few of us that had them, quite a bit higher than they are at the minute.
So I'll be honest, I had Bolton a little bit lower than where they are at the minute.
Okay.
I think I had them 9th or 10th, somewhere around there. I didn't have them getting into like the top 4 at the very least, and with an outside shot at the playoffs. I very much felt that they were going to need a little bit of a reset year, which kind of happened, but maybe not quite as much as I was necessarily expecting. But they're an interesting side, our Bolton. And I think they have very much started to pick up a little bit from where they were a little bit earlier on in the season as well. I say that apart from their last 3 matches.
I say the last 3 games haven't.
Which is the point. I think that we are now playing them at probably the best time that we could do, as they are on a little bit of a slip. Of course, new manager Stephen Schumacher had come in, and I think there was the hope that things would turn around there. I struggle to see it happening this season, but he came in and they did very, very quickly start to turn things around. Until then, like I say, these kind of last few games where it's really just halted their progression, kind of their strengthening of their position in those playoff spots. Or, well, realistically, it is only 6th that's being fought for, but you know what I mean.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of Ian Evatt. I think similar to what Gaz said last week around Steve Evans, there was a begrudging respect for him with regard to what he did. Obviously, seeing him go earlier in the season, I was a little bit surprised, if I'm honest. I know they, I don't know. I just didn't expect to see them part ways. But as you say, Schumacher's come in. I think that looking back through the results, had a decent February, March, and it was 4 wins out of 5. Then there was 3 losses on the bounce, then 2 wins on the trot, and then now they've got 3 losses on the bounce. Yeah, it almost seems a bit like he's struggling. I think that the biggest thing that I've been able to look at so far with the research is that they are poor, very poor at defending set pieces, which should, if you're a Lincoln City fan, that should just make your eyes light up. They are the joint 3rd worst in the division alongside Crawley for set pieces conceded. They've conceded 20 from them. So, I mean, I suppose the obvious thing to say is we can probably expect to see a little bit of an aerial bombardment from set pieces on Monday, Charlie.
Yeah, and do you know what? It is a big key to our game. We know that, and it's always weird, isn't it, with set pieces? Because I think a lot of people, if you turn around and say, "Oh, yeah, we score lots of goals from set pieces," the immediate thought is, "Oh, you're one of those sorts of teams here." You're not actually very good when the ball's on the ground, but you can whip one in from 30 yards out or something like that, or from a corner. But no, I think we can do both. But absolutely, the set piece arsenal that we really do seem to have is strong. And when we do face a team who really don't seem to know how to defend them at all, it's kind of going to be a real asset for us on Monday. Obviously, they will know that, so they've got the opportunity to try and kind of turn that around and maybe go a little bit overboard, if you like, on kind of defensive set piece training. which can sometimes actually kind of halt your chances against that. But again, I think our strength, their weakness, it can only point to the fact it is a strong positive for us, and it is something that we are likely to try and target on Monday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I'm just looking through everything here. I mean, where are we in terms of goals scored? Bolton are 6th in the table. They've also conceded an awful lot this season as well. It just seems to be, from what Chris would normally say, you look at the metrics and they're all bang in the middle of the table for most of them. Obviously, there's a couple of outliers where you've got, say, 3rd worst in the division at conceding set pieces. It just seems like this could be another opportunity to really spoil a party. I think, if I'm honest, I think looking at the table and looking at the games that are left now, I would probably say that, Orient have got Wickham in the final day. Reading have got Bristol Rovers, or Mansfield and then Bristol Rovers to come. Of those 3 clubs, because I mean, you're looking at Orient, Reading, and Bolton for that final playoff spot. I think even though we beat them yesterday, I still think Reading would probably be the team that I would pick in that instance, just based on the games that they have left. I mean, Bolton, obviously, they've got ourselves, Peterborough, and who else have they got left in the final game? Stevenage in the final game. So, yeah, interesting one for me. I would probably say, because they've got to make up 3 points and an awful lot of goals. So it almost feels like they're out of the running at this point, doesn't it?
Yes, honestly. Unless you see, the likes of Mansfield and Cambridge just on Monday do something pretty extraordinary. But no, we do effectively have the opportunity on Monday to end any chances that Bolton think that they've got. A win for us and a win for both Reading and Leyton Orient, which, like you say, to be fair, really wouldn't be that surprising with their opposition that they are playing on Monday. It would very much end their opportunities. And again, that would be really nice to do to Bolton. I'll be honest, they're an interesting side. They're a good side. They're a side that will be a lot better next season. I think once Stephen Schumacher full pre-season with the team, I think they're going to come back fighting next year. But I don't see them doing anything else this season. Even if they made the playoffs, I don't see them having any chance of winning it, if I'm honest. So, yeah, I would like to watch us ruin another team's party.
No, it's fair enough. It is slightly evil, but yeah, I will. I'll agree with you on that one.
Is it slightly evil? Yes.
No, it's just funny.
If we have to sit there whilst Portsmouth tried to do it to us last season,
yeah, that's true.
Yes. So do you know what? This year, out for revenge on every single team in the division.
I'm still, as I say, I don't think I'm still not sure. With regards to Wrexham, and I kind of want them to just get out of the league, but it would be funny. I don't know. Interesting one. But yeah, looking at the last 3, because I only mentioned 2 of the games they have. So Orient have Cambridge, Wickham, and Huddersfield is their last game. Huddersfield have just completely collapsed at this point. Bolton have us, Peterborough, and Stevenage. I nearly said Bolton. I was like, that can't be right. And then Reading, as I said, have got Mansfield. They've got Bristol Rovers, and then they've got Barnsley on the final day. Now, Barnsley look like they might have collapsed a little bit as well. If I'm right in thinking. Yes, I am right in thinking they have completely collapsed.
Well, they collapsed mid-game yesterday as well.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like, Orient coming away 4-3 winners yesterday was just fantastic for them. But yeah, look, I mean, with regard to Monday, we know it's going to be another difficult game. We know that they've still got something to fight for. It's going to be, it's probably going to be a bit of a scrap as well, isn't it, Charlie? Is there anybody that you've singled out as a, as a bit of a danger man for Bolton, and how can we combat them?
I think when you talk about danger man, obviously Collins up top is a danger man for both teams, actually.
I was going to say, that's a bit of a softball, isn't it? Just very slowly throw it to you and then you just knock it out. There we go.
Exactly. But yeah, one of the players that I always have kind of kept an eye on at Bolton, I think this is his second season there now, isn't it? Is Josh Dacus-Cogley, because he was a player that we were very heavily linked with before he moved to Bolton. It is his second season. I am writing that. I thought I was. That's good. Yeah. But he is a player that we were really heavily linked with, and whether that is actually the case or not, I don't know. But it seemed as though, from all the reports, that Bolton kind of swooped in quite late on to beat us to it, playing on kind of that right wing back, kind of more of an attacking right wing back position. I think he's a really, really good player, and I think he creates a lot of opportunities from the position he's in as well. He's got 6 assists over the course of the season, which is one of the best players in his position. His passing metrics are just top compared to players in his position, and I think he's somebody that really could go at our kind of left defensive side. Luckily for us, however, I think our left defensive side is one of our best positions of the season in Sean Rowan.
100%. I was going to say as well, the stats do tend to skew a little bit to the right for Bolton. There'll be, they do attack quite a bit more down the right. So it does seem like Sean's going to be in for a fun afternoon. I wouldn't worry too much given how he performed yesterday. I thought he was absolutely superb. He was my man of the match. I think I've seen him given man of the match in a few places as well. So, look, we're still kind of toying with this system. We're still toying with who's going to fit into this system. And one big question is one that's actually been asked by Steve. It is on my notes as well. Does Pawdy play? Very, very interesting question, because I don't necessarily think we've looked worse for having him out of the squad. However, the old argument, if your captain's fit and available, you play him. Now, coming back off a 4-game suspension when there's not really anything to play for in terms of a league position, that might change things slightly. But would you play Pawdy O'Connor on Monday, Charlie?
Would I? No, honestly. But I also think that the lineup, it probably very much does depend a little bit on next season as well, doesn't it?
100%.
Depends on where we're at in terms of Pawdy for next season. It depends on where we're at in terms of Adam Jackson for next season. It depends on where we're at in terms of, obviously, Lewis Montsma expected to be here next year as well. Tom Hamer, what kind of fitness levels are Jacko and Montsma both at? Can they both be fit to play a full or almost a full 90 tomorrow? Can Tom Hamer do that? I think it's always nice to have the option of having Pawdy there, because we know how good Pawdy O'Connor is as a centre-half in this division. I wouldn't just slot him straight back in. I think that's a reward that someone who's been suspended for 4 games maybe shouldn't be automatically afforded, unless we choose to put him in there because we want to kind of keep the other players rested and fit for the last 2 of the season.
Yep. No, I would agree.
Although all I will say is, if this is the end of Pawdy O'Connor's time at Lincoln City, I do still want him to go out on a high, because he is the captain. So I would still like to see him feature somewhat heavily in the last 3 games. But I just don't know about him just dropping straight back in on Monday.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think, again, Chris and I touched on this on Thursday, and we said, is it going to be one where we'd expect him to play the last game of the season against Wrexham? I think that's a given. If he's available, he will play. Regarding Monday, I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't think anybody's done anything necessarily to warrant being dropped. If everybody's, if everybody that played on Friday is fit and available, the only change that I would make to that 11 would be the sub that was made on, 64 minutes.
Arrowham for Bayliss.
Knew you'd say that. No, I'd start with Collins instead of Draper. That's it for me. That's the only change that I would make. Whether that is how it will happen, I don't know. But to me, in order for somebody to lose out to Pawdy O'Connor, that suggests they've done something wrong, rather than Pawdy doing something right. And I don't think Hamer or Jackson put a foot wrong yesterday. I think they've been great. So I wouldn't automatically have Porty coming back, even though there is that, well, he's your captain, he's got to play. It's a really tricky one, isn't it? But
I agree with he's the captain, he's got to play. If we didn't have leaders on the pitch, and I think the way we're at now and the team makeup that we've got now means we've got more leaders on that pitch than I think we have done for a good few years.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, you look at it, you've got James Collins, you've got Tendai Darikwa, you've got Adam Jackson, Ethan Arahan. Well, maybe not Ethan. I think he possibly needs to mature a little bit before he's.
But I think he is a leader to some of those players around him.
He is. But I think, well, saying that, since he's, since we've seen him since he's come back, he hasn't really been all that mouthy, which is, probably a sign of him learning. But yeah, he's definitely one for the future. Whether it's with us or not, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what the summer holds. But yeah, look, I think it's an interesting discussion. I think it will probably set tongues wagging if he does start, because that would potentially imply with the gaffer saying, I'm looking at plans for next season. I'm looking at how we're going to approach things next season. All of a sudden, if Porty kind of starts in a game where he's just come back from suspension and we've only got 3 left, either that implies, he could be, he could have signed a new contract, or the other hand of it is, if he doesn't start, then it's, he's going then, isn't he? So, yeah, I expect the fan zone to be awash with speculation on Tuesday. Tuesday at 2:00 on Monday is what I meant to say, for Christ's sake. Honestly, all over the shop at the minute. So, Charlie, let's have a look. What's your prediction for Monday afternoon?
They're always interesting games against Bolton. And I'm just going to go nice and simple. I think it's going to be a good performance, but I think they're also going to come and they're going to be quite strong to us as well. I'm going to go with 1-1 with the chance that we nick it later on 2-1, but we'll go 1-1.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with a 2-0 win, send everybody home nice and happy for Easter. I think James Collins will bag one, and then Freddie will come on as a sub. Everyone will moan about it, and then he'll get a late second. So that's what it is for me. But right now, I think we're rapidly hurtling towards the end of the podcast. I don't think there's anything else that's coming out. Obviously, game yesterday. I don't think there's anything additional from the club since the game. I don't think there's any injuries to worry about ahead of Monday, or necessarily any new ones. Although I did see Wheelston played at Boston yesterday, and Tyler Walker was not in the squad because, as we said last week, he did come off after 20-something minutes, and it does appear that he is injured again, which, again, I just hope it's not serious. I hope it's I've stubbed my toe. Yeah. But there's not really too much news, and I just really hope that he can get his career back on track. I really don't think there's anything else that we can talk about from the football club's perspective. Obviously, the big thing, we've spoken about it multiple times, and this will be the second last podcast that we speak about it. Gary is running the London Marathon next Sunday. Go and sponsor him on whatever platforms you can. We've got eBay auctions for some signed shirts. We've got the raffle has been drawn, so that's no good. There is a there is still the fundraising page that's up there. Go and chuck him a couple of quid if you can afford it. He's just been smashing all of his training, and he's past the £5,000 mark now for his fundraising towards the foundation. So, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely go and help him out if you haven't already. I think we said as well, the raffle winners are on the site now. I think it's one of the pin posts. Oh, it's not pin posts, but yeah, go check that if you bought raffle tickets. And let's have a quick look at some of the predictions we've got. Roy has said 1-1 for him, and Kyle says, I'm going for a half-empty away end by 75 minutes. Oh, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? That would be lovely.
We can dream, can't we? We can dream.
Absolutely, we can. Right then, Charlie, is there anything else that you want to talk about or plug or discuss before we disappear for the day?
No, I don't believe there is. The sun is shining, so I think I might head out. Have a lovely Easter for those that celebrate. For those that don't celebrate, just have a great few days off work.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good bank holiday. And also, I think that we should probably just drop this in as a very, very tiny little closer. This has probably been one that maybe at some points may have had Charlie, with a part of his anatomy looking like a rabbit's nostril, because before this, he did say, can we not go live because my laptop has been playing up something chronic and shutting down at random moments. So the fact that we've made it through the whole podcast without anything dying has been pretty impressive. So yeah, as Keith says here, governors, thanks to all of you for the time and effort that you guys put in. Look, we wouldn't do it if we didn't enjoy it. We wouldn't do it if we had kit that didn't work, would we, Charlie?
Look, it's been dire. I guarantee I'm going to close this down now, and I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. Okay. That sounds really dodgy. I wasn't on some dodgy site, by the way, that made it suddenly
You're
shut
playing
down.
Football Manager, let's be honest.
I was playing Football Manager, and then it just, boom, cut out. So I'm going to take a photo the minute it does it, because it's going to happen in 5 minutes, because it just wants to make me look like a twat.
Well, we're all very glad that it didn't do it during the podcast. Look, thank you ever so much for joining us, guys. It's very, very much appreciated. We'll see you at the bank on Monday. I think Gary and Chris are with you on Tuesday to talk through what will hopefully be another 3 points for the Imps as the 2024-25 season comes to a close. That was episode number 376 of the Stacey West podcast. I've been Ben. That's been Charlie. Only one last thing to say. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.
Hey!